Well, good evening, DCL podcast fans. Happy weekend. It is Saturday night, and the ships are sailing, aren't they, Christy?
Ah, they are. It's so exciting.
Chris, how are you doing tonight?
Oh, I'm doing great. It's a really hot day in Southern California, and it's sunny. I can't complain.
Well, after being on a houseboat for the last 7 days, I could tell you that it was nice being back on the water. Not quite like we're going to talk about tonight with Christy, but it was good to be back on the water. And we were down in California in Shasta Lake. I heard I learned finally that it's not Lake Shasta, it's Shasta Lake. So I've been calling it wrong all these years.
How was that houseboat?
You know what? It was super cool. It was super fun. And the fact that we had a ski boat made it that kind of added to it. I think if we were stuck on the houseboat the whole time, that might have been a little old, but we had paddle boards and all kinds of other stuff. So
you started talking about things I don't even understand. You had a boat inside of your houseboat? Is that what's going on here? What?
Were you trailing a boat?
We were trailing a boat.
With all the stuff too? Did they like shove the things in the boat or?
Yeah. We had all the we had the paddle boards up there.
Houseboat?
Well, it was big enough to sleep. At one point, we had, let's see, 8, 9.
At one point,
we had 11. We had 11 people on there at one point. So enough.
What do you mean at one point? Was there just like one night where you invited strangers, or?
Yeah. Well, why didn't we get invited? By the way, if strangers, we're not even strangers. You live in California.
I know we've completely digressed here, like we normally do.
It's fine. It's the same show. People have to see that
Steve, you went on a houseboat, and none of us have done that, so we had to ask questions.
We have so many questions too.
We do. We've got some questions from listeners too. Holly, how are you doing? She says she can't wait to hear about Christy's trip report, and we're gonna have a good time talking about it tonight. But yeah, so we had 2 families of 8 plus a friend, and then we invited another couple came along for the first 2 nights, and then they had to leave and go back. But we were down in California, and it was like 103 degrees a couple days out there, but so it was nice to be on the water where you could jump in. So
listen, you sent us pictures that literally looked dystopian. It looked like you were on Mars, but you had happened to find like a water source or something. I was like not expecting it to be such a rocky, barren lake environment.
Yeah. So with if anybody doesn't know, California's under a drought this year, and so the lakes are those lakes that provide water to the valley are really low.
Right.
So yeah, it looked like Mars because it was the fires nearby too. So they had the smoke in the air, but it cleared up for the rest of the time. But you know what? We kind of digress. Welcome back to the Cove Cafe. I love to say that we can say it's the Cove Cafe because the magic right now is plying the waters of the Irish Sea, and our friends the Towler's on board. And I can't wait to bring that trip later this week.
So exciting.
Yeah, it's good to see Disney Cruise Line back on the water, but we're not going to talk about Disney Cruise Line tonight, are we, Christy?
No.
Not today, because they did invite me on a test cruise and Royal did. So they are who we get to talk about.
All right. So Royal Caribbean, that's a product you're very familiar with. You've sailed with them a lot of different times. Before we jump into it, why don't you give an overview of Royal Caribbean? What is Royal Caribbean in your mind, Christy?
I think Royal Caribbean is a great cruise line for the active cruiser. So it can even be multi-generational, but the cruiser that wants to do the rock climbing wall or go do zip lining across your cruise ship. It's a small zip line is what I've learned, but you can zip line, during parts of your cruise ship. You can go ice skating actually on most of their ships. So you could do the flow rider. It to me is for the active cruiser. Like, maybe somebody who's looking for something a little bit different than Disney. Or one of the things I like about Royal is that you can do more as a family on Royal together, activity-wise. So like, Steve, this would be good for your family because you guys are very active all the time. You could do more together versus them going to the kids club and doing things by themselves and you doing things by yourself. Besides what trivia and swimming and stuff, what do you do together on Disney Cruise Line? So this gives you activities. They also have putt-putt just like Disney does. So that's something you can all do together. But I would just say it's a mass market cruise line. It's in the same category as Norwegian and Carnival. I know people put Carnival down, but they are technically in the same category as Royal and Norwegian. And it's a solid cruise line.
Chris, have you sailed on Royal before?
I've not sailed on Royal before, but I would. Like I said, I'll try any cruise line once. But Royal is on my list partially because of the ship class that Christy sailed on. Because for those of you who are unfamiliar with Royal's lineup, they were the first cruise line to launch. I don't even know what we're calling it, but like
it's gotta be the mega ship, right?
Yeah, the mega ship. And basically what it is like a 6,000 passenger plus, when it's at double occupancy, cruise ship. And it's so large that there are ports that it can't go to. And it's a massive class of ship. In fact, Royal surprised a lot of people by, after this class of ship, being like, we're going to build some smaller ships now, because I think they realized, wow, there's a big market for these ships that can do literally everything. There's also a market for large ships that are not so big that they can't go certain places. But Chrissy, honestly, that's why I was so excited for you to sail, because maybe you have sailed on this class of ship before.
I haven't.
You haven't. So
right.
I can't wait to hear your hot take on it.
Yeah. And it was, I'm excited to talk about it. I was excited to get on, not because it was time to get into cruising, but I've seen it before. So yeah.
Yeah. You have you even seen it in person, like in a port? Oh, I think Christy's having one of those technical difficulty moments.
I've definitely
and
seen it.
She probably doesn't know
before.
that she's having that.
Oh, am I?
You're frozen. Maybe refresh and come back in, and Steve and I will. Yeah, you seem caught up now. Maybe you don't need to leave.
Okay.
Maybe you just start talking.
Right,
you were saying you had never seen it before, so tell us about that.
I hadn't. I had seen it before, but because I've been at port when it's been at port at the same time. But I don't think I'd ever been that close to it. And I hadn't been in it before.
Sure. And being inside of a ship, as we all know, is so different than seeing it from the outside.
Yeah. What's interesting to me is, maybe I shouldn't give this way to the end. Do you want my overall feedback on the size of it now, or do you want to save that for later?
Maybe let's save it for later. Yeah. Though my caveat for anything you have to say is, how many people were on this ship?
Well, okay. I'm not going to even talk about whether something felt crowded or not crowded, because there were literally 700 passengers. They were going to have 1,000 or something, but according to our head waiter, there were 700 and 1,800 crew.
Right. So there were like twice as many crew, more than twice as many crew as there were people. And you were on one of the largest ships in the world. So in the grand scheme of things, you wouldn't be able to tell us what it's like. The biggest critique I hear about that ship class is it's so big that there are so many people on those ships that it can feel less intimate than a normal cruise ship. But you wouldn't be able to comment on that piece because it probably felt pretty intimate for you.
It was empty all the time. You would look often and only see crew, if you saw anybody at all.
So let's start from the beginning. Let's start our story from the beginning, where all fairy tales start, because this was kind of a fairy tale come true for you, getting the opportunity to go on this. We saw, I don't know which one we saw, but we saw one of the Royal Caribbean ships when we were in St. Thomas, when we were on the Fantasy, and oh my gosh, those things are just freaking, like, you see the Fantasy and you think the Fantasy is a big ship. Those things are just massive.
It just eats the ship.
Yeah. So just to kind of put it in perspective, the Allure of the Seas is the second and maybe the third biggest ship now with Royal Caribbean, because Harmony of the Seas actually beat her out. Oasis of the Seas was the first Oasis class ship for Royal Caribbean, and it holds 5,500 to 6,500 passengers versus the Fantasy and the Dream, which hold about 4,000, and the Wish is roughly about in that same category as well. So just kind of starting off.
Let's just really quick on the Dream. There's rarely 4,000 cruising passengers on it. That would be, so I think it's probably closer to 3,800, 700. So just so people have an idea.
Right.
It would be if everybody had double or triple occupancy in their room.
Triple, quad occupancy, I think, or something.
Yeah, like if everyone had the kids, which we know doesn't always happen on a DCL cruise. But the point is, DCL does not touch these particular size classes.
Yeah.
So you got an opportunity to go on this. How did you get to do this? So this was a test cruise for Royal Caribbean. How did you get it selected to be able to do this?
So my travel agency that I work for is a pretty big seller of Royal Caribbean Cruises. We have a really good relationship with the sales manager that works for Royal. And the sales managers were allowed to come out and invite agency representatives. So we were invited, our agency was invited, and anybody who wanted to do any of the test cruises. Like I have another agent colleague that's out on the Ovation right now. So out in Alaska doing that would be really cool. So that one was like a 4-day test cruise, I believe. But so they just invited us and said, hey, this is out there. I happened to see it right away. And I got my request in right away. And she said, okay, I've added you to the list. And I said, does that mean I'm going? And she said, yeah, as long as, it doesn't get canceled. So you can plan on going. And then I looked at my calendar because I was like, who cares? It's Tuesday and, through Thursday of next week. And then I remembered, oh yeah, I'm going to be in Michigan those days. So we had to scramble and do some stuff to change some flights to get us back in time. But we did that. And so I flew in like in the olden days where I flew in and drove to the cruise port.
Which is funny, considering that Michigan is freezing. And what was it really? Your time in Michigan is normally like you go to Florida so you could get out of the really cold weather. But now in the summer, you're going down even then just to get a taste of the tropics. My question would be, so I was maybe going to go with you.
I know!
And that was going to be so much fun, but work, I just couldn't swing it. So who went with you? What was that like?
Yeah, my girlfriend from law school. So we met in law school, became friends our first year, have stayed in touch, stayed friends. It was so great for both of us because, she has a 4-year-old and, with kids, people, it's a lot. And so it was great that she got this little getaway too. So she actually flew back on our flight from Michigan. So she was there at the same time and we all just boarded. And then, the boys dropped us off at the port on their way.
Oh, that sounds like a fun, much needed trip. So you were with your friend.
I was with my girlfriend. Yes. Yeah. And can we talk about the port? So when there's not cruises going out, you don't know where to go. There's no signs. There's nothing to tell us. There was literally not another car driving into the port at the same time that we arrived. We kind of arrived late. I think we had to do a check-in and I picked because we knew we had a late flight, 2:00 is our check-in time. And there was actually one other dude that was walking in at the same time we walked in, but we didn't know where to go. It's big terminal. We could see the ship. We didn't exactly know how to get to the ship. And when you're even coming in off the highway, it says we knew it was Terminal 1, but there were 3 A, B, and C or something of terminal. It was just very confusing. It is so much easier to cruise when ships are sailing because they tell you where to go. No one told us where to go.
What port were you sailing out of?
Port Canaveral.
Okay.
So right here in Orlando, right outside, an hour and 15 minutes from Walt Disney World.
Right. Okay, so you got on the ship at 2 something. Was there COVID protocol or something that you had to go through to get on?
Yeah, so a couple of things. The check-in process was actually very similar to our February 2020 cruise. Then we cruised the Edge. They already had the facial technology and just some of that random technology that cruise lines are using now. They actually, in 2022, they had us upload our pictures for the CPass cards, whatever their version of it is called. And Royal Caribbean had us do the exact same thing. So we had to upload our picture ahead of time and make sure, you know, it's just our face and blah, blah, blah. And then scan our passport, and it like scans it and makes it all pop up into the screen. That was super convenient. Then the other protocol that we had to do ahead of time is we could watch our safety videos, and it like monitored in the app that you watched the safety videos and checked them off, so that when we got on the ship, the safety videos were done. We still had to go to our muster station before the ship could leave, or like I think they wanted us to be there by like 4:00 or something like that. But so we still had to go to that muster station, but we did this is how you put on a lifeboat. This is what you do if there's an emergency. Like all the spiel for the most part that they give, we watch in a video. Right. And then the other things that happened at the port, I did talk about this in our Patreon group, but they had a bracelet that was called a tracelet, which Shannon Ford reminded us of the name. But it's basically like a magic band, where I'm assuming it's that same technology, although this one could not be wet. You couldn't shower with it. You couldn't swim with it. But the idea is that it traces your location on the ship, so that if there were people that were COVID positive near you, they could isolate you away if you were, you know, next to that person for what would be deemed the extended period of time or things like that.
That's interesting, and maybe the future of cruising, who knows? So that technology, like near field communication chips or whatever, is the same thing that Disney uses to, like, when you're on the Small World boats at the end, it'll be like, goodbye, Christy, or whatever. Yes. It's that thing also.
And where they know where your children are in the kids club, like which side, because the kids wear the little magic band on the cruises as well.
So we know Disney has that technology. They have not installed that technology on their ships, at least to our knowledge.
Well, they have it for the kids club, so we know.
Right, but I guess I mean you would have to install it all over the ship in order for you to do effective contact tracing. And to our knowledge, they haven't installed it all over the ship, or they don't have a plan to do that right now. But interesting to think about that the cruise industry could go that direction, you know, just as a way to dispel the myth that cruise ships are petri dishes and so on.
Well, and then I think sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say they can track the kids around the ship. So that technology is all the way around the ship. Yeah, they can, because I've talked to them, and they've tracked our kids up to the ice cream machine. So they can, now they may not have it. It may not be as good as it may not be as good as Royal as far as the sensors go, you know, like your cell towers or whatever else. But I'm guessing that they could add that pretty quickly, so they can at least see up to the ice cream machine, because they track my kids up there. How about as far as getting on? Did you have to be vaccinated? Was there any requirements that way?
Literally every cruiser who signed up to do this test cruise, that was a requirement. You had to be fully vaccinated more than 2 weeks after your last shot in order to be considered for the test cruise. But fun fact, they made some people deemed unvaccinated so that the crew could test the procedures for vaccinated versus unvaccinated. So Royal told us that if you're signing up to do this, you agree to the protocols, and that also some people are going to be deemed unvaccinated, again, so the crew could test the procedures, and that those people we would find out like in an email, and we never got the email that said we were unvaccinated. And when we got there, we did have to show our vaccination card, but again, this was a test cruise. And for any other cruise, if you're choosing to show that you are vaccinated, then you'll just show that at the port. The same. So they needed the original. It couldn't be a photocopy, things like that. And then at the port, they also took our temperature. So I guess that was the only other protocol thing. And then they asked the regular health questions. They did also give us, Shannon talked about this in our episode that we did about her Freedom of the Seas cruise, but they gave us like a little rubber bracelet that we wore for the entire cruise that said we were vaccinated as well. I mean, it just said like the Royal Comeback or something like that, but its point was to deem us in the vaccinated category. And there were a couple of venues that had signs out front that said you had to be vaccinated to be in here.
So did they give you any type of information ahead of time for people that are, you know, sailing on Royal, as far as like what they can do if they're vaccinated versus if they just decide not to?
Royal has this information available, but not for the test cruise. They did say if you are deemed unvaccinated or if we're testing the quarantine procedures, you might be in your cabin. So they told us that ahead of time. They said, like, you're agreeing to do this. You have no expectation of what you're doing with your time during your cruise. And so, that was fine. It was 2 days. Who cares? So we had books, we had movies, we had the TV. So we didn't care. We didn't end up having to be stuck in the room. But frankly, we're two parents that do a lot. It wouldn't have been the end of our life to be stuck in a room for 2 days either.
Okay. So anything else about the port as far as embarkation, getting on that stood out that was different?
No, so this isn't what's different, but this is what's going to be, I think, the future for a little while. Man, the crew, so even the port crew were so amazing. Like, first of all, there were probably more port employees, or at least a third of the past. There was like hundreds of port employees overall, at least 100. And what, for 700 people? But they just basically were testing them. So everybody who would typically be at the port was there working. All the people outside, there were no porters, but all the people outside telling us even where to go. The people in the building, all the security lanes, like all of these things, all the check-in lanes. Maybe not all of them, but there were like all of this stuff was
a lot more
open.
Than they needed.
There was
as
all
a way
this
to
was
give
open.
People jobs.
Right. And when we walked in, there was only us and one other person walking through the entire building. And all of these people were everywhere. Their technology had a little problem, like because it had been a while since they checked somebody in, it took them a while to check somebody in again. But it still was maybe 10 minutes or 15 minutes we were on board. Okay. Probably the other thing that was different is I don't think they really checked what was happening in our luggage that much. Like everything went through the scanner. I realized I had a bottle of water in there that never would have been allowed in typical Royal Caribbean days. So I think they were just like, make sure there's no weapons, let the people go through kind of thing.
Right.
Well, hold that thought. Before we move on to the cruise, we had a couple just comments and stuff like that. Doug says, talk to the sales manager to getting me a complimentary upgrade for my Alaska cruise on RCL next year. Ha, ha, ha.
I don't get them for myself either, Doug.
Holly says, what port did you sail at Port Canaveral? Was a 2-day, and you went to Coco Cay on your second day, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And then Maria says, aren't those bands the same ones that they use to place orders, and then they'll find you and deliver it to you?
Yeah, so that's a different cruise line, I think. I don't think that Royal's doing that. I could be wrong about that, but Princess is doing that. So
yeah, I was just going to say the medallion class ships, they call them.
Okay.
Yes.
And then Sarah's, go ahead.
Go on. That's it.
Sarah says, I thought they used facial recognition on cameras to trace kids around the ship.
They probably do.
They probably do.
Yeah, the answer is we're not entirely sure. I would be fascinated to find out from someone who works at DCL what did allow them to find Steve's kid at the ice cream machine. Was it that bracelet? Was it facial recognition? Because I do think that there could be a future in cruising where there's more tracking people around the ship just as a way to help them understand sickness or anything like that.
Kelly says, really interested in Christy's experience. Thank you for this. Of course, Kelly, thank you for all your support over the years too. And John says, Chris, that castle is amazing.
It is amazing.
Thanks. Took me way too long to make.
All right. So you get on board the ship. Let's see. Maria says DCL does track with the band and the kids. Yeah, I think that's what it is. Other than the fact that they probably know my kid is always at the ice cream machine. Chris, I know that you want to know about Christy's accommodation. Since there were so few people, I'm sure you had a suite, right?
No, we did not have a suite. We knew that ahead of time. We knew what our room number was. We were deck 10 all the way aft. Like we were literally the last room before the aqua suite that is at the very corner of the ship. So, we were in a regular standard veranda. It felt a little cozy in there. I'm not going to lie. I think our cabin said it slept 4. I cannot imagine putting 4 people in there. Like if they're big people.
Like adults.
Still.
Yeah. My thing is, they certainly had enough suites and bigger cabins for everyone on the ship. But
and they gave no one any of them.
Yeah. They're probably also trying to figure out, like, some people have to be aft and some people have to be midship and some people have to be forward. What would really be rough is if you got put in like an inside cabin or something like that on this test cruise, knowing that other people were in verandas. But
for sure. And I'm sure every single person was in a veranda. There was a colleague that worked for a different agency that I know from Michigan who was on this cruise as well. And she was in like deck 8 midship somewhere. So we were deck 10 aft. She was deck 8 midship, same balcony cabins. I did ask our room steward, because why not, if anybody was in a suite during this test cruise, and he said no, not one person. We also asked him if he would give us a tour, let us in the aqua class 2-bedroom stateroom, which was adjacent to ours, that had this beautiful, huge wraparound balcony. So he did let us walk through there briefly on our last night, and that's a pretty sweet cabin. Like, you have a view of the Aqua Theater. So the Aqua Theater is, I think, one of the coolest things, in my opinion, for this class of ship for Royal Caribbean. They actually do diving shows and water shows at sea while the ship is at sea. These people are diving, and this pool does not look big enough to be diving on a moving ship into it. And then apparently there was like, which I realized after the fact, there were practices of that diving show during some random day, and I missed it.
Oh.
I could have seen it because otherwise the show wasn't happening. None of the main shows were happening during our cruise. There was like a ventriloquist, and there was, me and variety shows like that. And then there was some other like older man singing from the Bing Crosby days type of situation that was occurring one night that we opted not to go to that too.
A good crooner.
You should work for the marketing team at Royal Caribbean. Come on our ships and an older man will sing for you.
Well, that's what we had. However, we did go to the schooner. Is that how you would say that?
Schooner
bar the one night, and they had the piano man, and then from there, you could see when he wasn't playing the piano, you could hear and listen to the orchestra and jazz band they had going in the promenade there. It was a lovely evening, a beautiful way to spend the evening, just listening to that music.
Before we talk about entertainment, can we go back to the cabins just real quick? So if nobody's ever sailed outside of Disney, you have a very different... When you get just those main cabins, it's a completely different feel. They're so much smaller. They're good for two people.
Smaller.
But beyond that fact, was it comfortable? Was it clean?
Yes.
Did you like it? Okay.
It was clean.
Clean. I shouldn't have said clean, because of course it was clean.
Because of course it's clean. But here's the other difference though of Disney. Yeah. There were some like marks on the ceiling, like just from age. And marks on sorry, Chris. Marks on like the headboard thing, again, just from age. That Disney would, in my opinion, never have left there. Never have let that stay there.
Okay.
And so, but they keep up the ship. Literally, this has been my Royal Caribbean Carnival Cruise Line, just like Disney. Someone's cleaning and painting that ship all day long, every single day. They're out there doing it. Even pre-pandemic, they were doing it. They're still doing that today. You're not touching something and having it be disgusting anywhere on the ship. But in the cabins, this is an older ship though. It's 2010 or whatever. So it had some 2010 wear. Oh my gosh. The plugs in the cabin, this is 2010. There were only 3. Only located on the desk. No USB. Like, I forgot to look at the TV. It didn't really matter at that point. We didn't need more things. There were 2 of us in the cabin. But no USB ports. Nothing next to... each of us had a bedside table. And the thing that's better about Royal than Disney is the beds can separate. So that if you are cruising with somebody who is not your... like if Chris came... Yeah, if Chris came on this cruise, we wouldn't have to spoon. We would each get our own like little bed. So they are capable of separating them. And so that's nice. Disney does not have that feature.
It doesn't, but also Disney's sleep experience is easily my favorite. I sleep so well on a Disney cruise ship.
Part of it is the nice rocking to sleep. And here's the thing. I took Dramamine. I don't know if I needed it. because
the ship was so big
the ship
that
was
the ocean
so big
couldn't
that-
move it.
and when it first left, we didn't even know it left.
You didn't know you were moving.
I had to like finally stare at the wall to see that it wasn't in the same spot.
Yeah, that's funny.
So it still had the nice tiny little rumble though of like, you know, rumblies, and the crew said that the ship was moving. That was like, it was so nice to actually feel some motion under our feet. Like they missed it going just slowly back and forth.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, go on.
No, so Maria asked when the ship was launched. She was launched in 2009. So I think that really speaks volumes of how well Disney takes care of their ships. We won't spend a lot on entertainment, since you said the majority of the big shows were going. And I know, Chris, you talking about your Norwegian cruise. I mean, I think that's one of the things that we love about Norwegian is just all the entertainment and some of the musical acts that are just kind of performing throughout the ship during the cruise.
Mm-hmm.
You can get to see some really things. Is that with Royal? Is that something that you have? Did they talk about having to book it on their app ahead of time for people that might be sailing soon with Royal? Is that something they're going to have to do ahead of time to see the shows?
Yes, and we technically had to as well. I don't know if they were enforcing it, but for us, they wouldn't let us book it until we arrived, until we had checked in.
Okay.
And gotten on board. And the same for dinner reservations, like the My Time dining, you were still supposed to make a reservation for it.
Okay. Any other entertainment questions, Chris?
No, it sounds like there wasn't much.
I mean, the thing is I didn't look for much.
Sure, it's a test cruise for 2 days, and you were getting back on the sea, and you're a host of a podcast about cruise ships, so of course you weren't like, I need to sit in a theater for 2 hours
I need to
and
go
watch...
listen to Bing Crosby music. I don't know who it
watch
was.
An old guy sing.
Yeah, it was definitely of that era.
All right, let's move it. Let's move into Chris's favorite thing, food. Chris, you want to take it away?
Food. Okay. I have not been shy about how absolutely disgusting the food was on my Norwegian cruise, though many of folks have told me that Norwegian sometimes has really good food. On my ship, it was also one of Norwegian's older ships. Food was no good. Also on Disney, sometimes food can be hit or miss. So my question for you is honest take. Also, I'll remind everyone, in case you need reminding, that Christy has a dietary restriction and an allergy. And Disney is like extremely accommodating to dietary restrictions and allergies. I too have, like, I could die if I eat this dietary restrictions. And so
and
Christy,
yours are harder.
Yeah, totally. But Christy, my question for you is, what was the dining like, given your special dining needs? In general, was the food good? So on.
Yeah, I'll give both, because my girlfriend doesn't eat. She could eat whatever, and she did. And it was a little bit funny. It was sort of like she hasn't eaten in a month, because each day she ate like 4 meals or something. So good on her. Very excited. She very much enjoyed all of her food and all of her food choices. The food was good. You know, there's a couple of little stories, like a couple of misses, if you will, but this is also a test cruise. They haven't had passengers that were like sort of real. Apparently they did have a sim cruise or two. I believe those must have just been Royal Caribbean passenger employees, right? And maybe it was just where they took half of the crew members and made them passengers, because we never heard of them actually having any other people brought on the ship before, I don't think. And so, but one of our waiters did say that there was like a simulation experience in the past, but we were their first real customers, and we weren't even real. But let me start with saying, when we got on board, we were hungry. It was after 2, we had just flown in, all this stuff. With my food restrictions, they could have walked me through the buffet line, but I told them I was celiac, which means medically I have to be gluten-free. It's not a choice, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And they immediately, I had a head waiter come up to me. She immediately said, tell me what you want. We'll get it from you from the back. So I loved that. I was very worried about this, but that I didn't have to fight to not eat in a buffet, because we actually watched them. I think this was the second day. Oh, when we were at Coco Cay at lunch, like I watched them. I did the same thing with the head waiter to walk around, and this is the exact same thing I would do at Disney. So you get the head waiter, ask what you want to eat, and then they go make you a plate of food. So the next day, some guy was putting meat down, and she's like, yeah, this would all be gluten-free. But then they touched the meat and the tongs to the flour tortilla, which means that none of that is gluten-free anymore because the flour can rub off, right? So they know that if it's serious, that it's way too risky for me to eat off a buffet line. So they had a huge buffet. I mean, ridiculously huge, frankly, for the time that I arrived on that ship and for as late as it was and for as few people that were on there. So many choices, so many options. And I feel like my girlfriend ate like 75 different options because she was like, oh, I want a little of this. I want a little of this. When I'm requesting food from the back, I need to be a little bit more specific. I need to, eat a regular serving of a regular amount of food. But the meal was, I don't know how to describe it. Was not amazing. It was a buffet meal, but it was very good. It was very, didn't make me sick. I was not sick at all during the 2 days I was there. And there was tons of choices.
How did the buffet work?
Little stations. Oh, they served you. Mm-hmm. So Carnival right now is the only cruise line that, and I don't know if this will change, but that is having you serve yourself your food in the buffet.
Okay. So from reports from Disney, they're going to be serving you drinks as well as food. So it was kind of the same way.
Yeah, and they are getting your cups for you. They have sections. They're serving it to you, or if you walk up, they're going to hand you all the stuff. Also, the Allure has, and I don't know if they retrofitted this on all the ships, but the hand washing station right at the beginning of the buffet. The other thing they're doing at buffets is, and I think technically we were supposed to make a reservation, and Shannon mentioned this when she did her Freedom Cruise, but really it's only important if it gets full. But they track you. So when you enter, you give them your CPAS card, they ding you and have you show that you're there, and then they check you out when you leave so they know how many people are in the room. But as soon as you walk in, you then have to go wash your hands in the hand washing station. Then you go on and get your food. So I like that. I like hand washing with real soap and water and stuff.
How about
as opposed to washy?
Oh, with the little
where they spray you with what looks like a disinfectant bottle. That's what they do on Norwegian.
Go on.
They get literally what looks like a household cleaning bottle and spray your hands with pure rubbing alcohol.
I will say too, just because I'm thinking about it, every time we walked into a venue or a store, and in stores you weren't technically supposed to touch anything, but you had to hand sanitize. So you either had to put your hands in their thing, which I'm all for, but I kind of didn't like the way it felt. So I just pulled out my own, and everybody was fine with me using my own alcohol-based before I walked in to each of the stores, which is complicated too if you have a cocktail or a drink in your hand. So then you have to hand sanitize. So you have to have a place to put your cocktail, but they don't have a place to put your cocktail. And then, so that's a fun. But anyway, food was great. Then dinner that night. So dinner, we were at My Time Dining. But before that, did you have a question, Steve?
Just were the specialty restaurants open, or were just
they were
dining? Okay, so you could have gone to it if you wanted to.
Yes. So they had offered us the opportunity to pay half price to go.
Okay.
So we just decided to go to what was included because I wanted to see what it was like. I knew the specialty restaurants would be really good, but I wanted to see what everything else was like. So we went to My Time Dining, and I will say the tables were, now My Time Dining is supposed to be all vaccinated individuals. So even when cruises get started, and even when they start out at whatever they're starting out at, like 40 to 50% or something, they're going to not have as many passengers, but they put some of those tables a little close together. So just a note. I mean, I didn't love that, I'll just say. And I would have, if I knew that potentially there were unvaccinated people on this cruise, and or if one night there was a person when we were almost done sat at the table right next to us. If that had happened the first night, I would have just said, I'd like to sit somewhere else if they were already there or something like that. So, and you can certainly do that. You can just say, I don't want to sit in that table, especially with My Time Dining, because it's not like you're assigned to a table. But then as far as the allergy, the menu, there was lots of choices. That was all fine. They knew I had an allergy, and yet somewhere it got lost because they weren't prepared for it in the dining room, which is always the thing I don't love about my time dining, which is why I don't recommend it for my people that have dietary restrictions and why I don't love it myself. So I didn't get bread. They didn't know there was bread. And then they served me, I think I talked about this in my stupid live thing. Then they served me raisin cinnamon bread at dinner.
Which
And
is
cold.
gluten-free?
Yeah, it was gluten-free, but it was cold raisin cinnamon bread. And that was supposed to be my bread course because they just weren't prepared. And then whatever. After that, it was just not my favorite thing. And it threw off my entire dinner experience. Because who eats raisin cinnamon bread at dinner for their pre-dinner bread?
It sounds like breakfast to me.
Exactly. And so that became a joke with our head waiter who eventually came around, and he was so amazing. And he was like, I will make sure you never have raisin cinnamon bread again because A, I don't like it. And, and I'm like ordered an Eggs Benedict the next day and they were terrific and they had them for me and they did not put it on raisin cinnamon bread. So it was perfect. And the next day I had real bread, gluten-free bread, but real bread for my dinner bread. But dinner was really good, actually, both nights.
Well, good. So a bunch of questions, a bunch of general questions. What type of activities were offered on board? Did they have like just all the trivia and all that type of stuff? Maybe drink tasting?
They have all those activities typically.
Okay, but maybe not on this cruise.
They had any of those activities.
And then I saw you were up in the solarium, I believe. How was the pool? Do you have to make a reservation to go to the pool? How did that work?
Yeah, you did not have to make a reservation to go to the pool. This particular cruise, there was literally almost nobody in any pool ever. It wasn't that big, but there were like 4 of them.
Oh, so they solved the problem for having 6,000 people on a ship by just having multiple bigger pools.
Yes. And there was a person doing laps the one day because there was literally almost never anybody in any of these pools. And they had lifeguards. And so just like Disney, and I think this is important for people with kids, they have life jackets on board, which is really great. And they also have lifeguards. In the lifeguards, there was literally not a person on the deck. I ran up to get myself water to take back to the cabin at night. And it was me. And I had just gotten there and only crew everywhere. And they're still like looking in the water because they have to do their water check and like doing the things that they're supposed to do to make sure everybody's safe. I was very impressed with the crew the whole time. I mean, they really were they were Disney quality remarkable, which I'd always felt they were good, but they were really good.
I mean, I felt that way about Norwegian, to be completely honest. I mean, the people that work there, they really go over. I mean, maybe you're going to run into a bad person every now and then, but that could be in any industry. But I think overall, even the experiences we've had have been very positive.
They want to be there. They want to be working. And on the subject of the crew, unless you want to move on, because I want to say one thing that's a fun fact that I think our listeners would appreciate.
Mm-hmm.
I asked our breakfast waiter, who was amazing. I wish I could have had him for dinner, but he was so good. So we had a moment. I don't remember why, but we had a moment where we were just sort of waiting. Oh, I think the other guy was supposed to be bringing something that was coming. And I said, so if you don't mind me asking, how is this working for you guys right now? Like, you're typically a tipped position. Are they bringing up your salary to compensate for not having these passengers on board? And he essentially said no, but everybody knows the passengers are coming. And that's all that matters to them. Mm-hmm. So that every tipped position is still a tipped position, but that they know that the passengers are coming, and that's enough to keep going. And like that, he could have chose to do something different, and this is still where he wanted to be.
Right. I mean, it's going to be different for them because the ships will have less people, so there'll be less tips in theory, and all of that. I'm also thinking one thing that Disney has shown us over the past week, depending on when you're listening to this, the CDC announced new indoor mask guidelines because the Delta variant is more spreadable and so on. And Disney responded that day. Was it that day or the next day by following the CDC's rules? So what I actually think is going to happen is that Disney will reliably follow what the CDC or the World Health Organization has to say on these types of policies for the cruise ship. Because, and this obviously makes the most sense, all the cruise lines are probably going to do this, because if someone were to get sick and God forbid die or have something terrible happen, these cruise companies want to be able to say, we did everything that we were required to do legally. And that's one of the reasons why I think there probably will be smaller sailings for a while, because they're doing their best to follow these recommendations or guidelines. So it will be hard for the crew, I think, because they're excited for people to come back, but it's not going to be like it was before, at least for a while.
Right. Although this other waiter at Royal really sort of thought September, October, they'd be back at full capacity.
100?
If things go the way they want. I don't know that that's the case. I don't know that they even know, but that was another comment that I had. And then on the subject of the crew, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but at Coco Cay, at Perfect Day, the lifeguards are all permanent residents. So the Perfect Day lifeguards are permanent residents of the island.
Mm-hmm.
And they also did all the maintenance once it was cruising's not coming back anytime soon. Instead of them bringing in independent contractors to keep up the island and do the things, the lifeguards that were there got to stay on or whatever and do all of that. I think the lifeguards and bartenders or whatever that work on the island got to stay and do all those filler jobs.
I'm picturing them riding the slides every day just to keep the waterworks going.
Yeah, exactly.
They got to make sure they still work, right? Just two other quick questions. Was there any mask requirements on board?
Oh yeah, we were told ahead of time, and then the rule was that we had to wear masks anytime we weren't in our stateroom or eating or sitting down.
Okay,
and even on deck, even outside.
No, outside. Outside, we did not have to wear one.
Okay, so indoors, unless you're in your stateroom or eating and drinking, you must wear a mask.
Or if you couldn't socially distance or physically distance, because I actually went up to get a beverage from an outdoor bar at one time, and the woman wanted me to put my mask on, which wasn't I don't even know why I wasn't wearing one, because I typically would anytime I'd walk up to somebody, and there was a bar in between us, but she asked me to put the mask on, which of course I had zero problems doing. But So outside regular, no mask, if you can physically distance, or if you're walking in the hallways. And then, listener Liz was asking if people were enforced or things like that. I will say that even for this 2-day test cruise, I think I told you guys this, I was so disappointed that people weren't following the rules. It's a 2-day test cruise. You were invited by Royal Caribbean. You told them you wanted to come and do this cruise and follow the rules, and you're not going to follow the rules. Either their nose is hanging out. Well, that doesn't work. We know that. It doesn't count as wearing a mask. Or they would this one same guy was always walking the halls without wearing his mask. We actually
singing. I forget what era you said.
Yeah.
Frank Sinatra.
Singing Bing Crosby songs.
Yeah, so, and I don't think he was addressed very much, which is super disappointing as well, especially because, they could lose their CDC approval at that point, and they're seeking it. Whether they needed to seek it or not, they were seeking the approval, and you would hate for people to do stuff that would violate that.
I just feel for all of those folks, because imagine doing your job and part of your job is to confront people who are hostile or uncomfortable with mask mandates. And I just feel for people on these ships who are we just want to come back to sailing, and now I have to confront you because you're not wearing a mask. And I just feel that's got to be such a weird tension for these crew members.
For sure. And they've always been of the mindset that we don't tell our guests no, right?
Right. So they're now literally having to do something that feels confrontational, that people have a lot of opinions about. So same thing with the airline industry. I mean, Steve knows better than I do, obviously, but the FAA has said there have been way more confrontations in the air over the past year than almost any other year ever. And that's because of this mask mandate stuff and people having to be confronted. So I think it's an interesting thing, but I really wonder what that will look like when ships are sailing at a larger scale, because it's always about accommodating the guests and making them happy. And so it's just going to make people uncomfortable. But, we'll see.
I just have to say, you need to decide if you're comfortable with whatever rule the cruise line says. And if you're not comfortable, please don't cruise yet. And we had another listener who commented that until masks aren't required, he didn't want to cruise. That's perfectly okay.
Makes a lot of sense. You're spending a lot of money on your vacation, and you should be able to go on a vacation the way that you want to go on a vacation. But if you can't follow the policies that the cruise line is putting in place, then for everybody's sake, just wait until it is safe and you have policies that work for you. I think that same thing with flying, Steve. I bet it's sort of like, if you can't wear a mask the entire flight, I know that's rough, but then just wait to fly.
Yeah, people don't want to hear that. And it's a little bit easier with flying because you can kick them off ahead of time, and or you can have the authorities meet them when you land, and then they can talk to them about their indiscretions.
That doesn't happen enough, though, and that bugs me too.
Sure,
but that's besides the point.
We could have an hour-long discussion on that one there. So
we have a couple comments that I'll read. Maria said, "Loved your Coco Cay tour. Got me excited to go. I did too. I fast-forwarded through a couple parts, but that's just because I was at work. I will probably watch it all, though, because I've always wanted to go to Coco Cay. I've heard a lot of people say it's one of the best private islands, so I want to talk about that with you next." Maria also said, "Wonder if maybe they were asking the test crew not to wear masks to see if if the crew was attentive to that. That could be an interesting little secret shopper trial." And then Sarah said, "Yes, if you go on a cruise." Sorry, go.
Hold on, one before you read Sarah's. To that point, the crew didn't know that every single person on the ship was vaccinated. So, because at least not all of the crew, because I randomly talked to one, like when you have an opportunity to talk to crew and get some information, you want the information. So sure. I randomly talked to somebody while I was waiting for something for somebody else. And they said, well, yeah, because we have to check this because this room is for vaccinated people only. Da, 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 da. And I don't remember why, but I was like, well, but everybody on this ship is vaccinated, even if they're pretending not to be. And they were like, oh, we did not know that.
Well, that's good. That's good. That's good training for them too. So
yeah. That makes sense. Then Sarah says, yes, if you go on a cruise, you agreed to those policies. Yeah, I agree.
Whatever they are.
Yeah, whatever they are, even if they're rough. I get the people who are upset being like, I booked these tickets to Disneyland before they switched the policy or whatever, and that's hard. I get that. But we're in a global pandemic. It's hard right now, no matter what. And you really do have to be flexible with these sorts of things because we don't know what tomorrow's going to look like.
And they're the cruise lines are all letting people have, once they've come out with a policy, a refund for a particular period of time if they can't follow or choose not to follow whatever, if they don't like the policy. And so it's making it so if you don't like it, you can move on.
All good points there. And to Sarah's point, and Sarah knows better than anybody else, and she was on the last Wonder Cruise, things can change on you. Nothing's set in stone. Just because you were scheduled to go to a certain port doesn't mean you're necessarily going to be at that port.
And if you ever read your cruise contract, they can do that. You've agreed to it all. It's okay. They have to give you nothing but food. It's like their obligation.
They'll keep you alive.
They have to keep you alive and give you some food. Okay, beyond that. Okay, so let's get to your one destination, Coco Cay. I think a lot of people are excited about this island. People are excited about maybe what Lighthouse Point could be. Talk to us about Coco Cay, Christy.
I mean, Shannon talked about with her Freedom Cruise Sailing that it was kind of the perfect island. And here's the thing. I don't know what it looks like with 6,000 people at it. And if you're not a mega ship stopping at Coco Cay, you're still there with 6,000 people because they're bringing two ships there at the same time. So
know that.
I learned because I have a cruise booked for Thanksgiving week and we were thinking of two different ships and they were both going at the same time. So they were stopping there on the same day. So then I asked somebody and they're like, yeah, so it's either the mega ship or anyway. But anyway, you get off, long walk, and then you're just sort of there, and you can decide, do you have passes to the water park? There is a tram after the walk that you can take to get to one of their several different sections. But actually, and it felt like when you looked at the map that everything was further away, but it's not. So it's fine.
So is it a proper island, or some of these cruise lines have private destinations where like Labadee is in Jamaica, right, or something, or Haiti. Yeah, and then Lighthouse Point is not an island; it is just the tip of an island, a very big, long island called Eleuthera. So, is it a private island or is it a private destination?
I'm pretty sure it's a private island. It's like Castaway, where it's a portion of an island, so we don't get access to all of it.
Okay, and I'm sure there's crew quarter, like the lifeguards have little houses and things like that.
Yeah, it's like Pop Century type, like, because we could see there was like a barrier that, the door was not quite closed. And of course, we have to look at all those places. They also had like a bunch of gardens. So I found this to be interesting. You could see the crew like barracks, if you will. And then they had these gardens in their little private area. That was the secret things I could see by looking through the open doors. If you do, they have that, it starts with an A. I don't know how to say the name, but that balloon that they have at Disney Springs.
Oh, Aeropostale or something. Yeah.
Kyle or something. They have that. So you can actually take that up and see the island. So
were they selling tickets the day you were there?
They were. We were actually allowed to do we were allowed in the water park portion for no charge. Mm-hmm. And we could do any of the water park activities.
I'm sure you did the big slides.
I definitely did not do any of those. I did one activity. I'll tell you what it is in a minute.
Can't wait.
Then so we could get in there, or we could pay half off for anything. So you could rent a cabana for half off. And we thought Disney cabanas were expensive. And these cabanas, every single cabana at Coco Cay is more expensive than any cabana at Disney, at Castaway Cay, by several $100s. And then they go up from there. There is a cabana that has like a little slide that slides into the water. By the way, their water is deep enough to like enjoy. So they've dredged it, whatever that word is. Where they make it deep enough so you can like actually enjoy it and not just walk forever to have your water up to your waist. So hopefully Disney during this pandemic has made their stuff a little bit deeper. They have that one cabana with a little slide that goes in. It starts at like $2,000 for the day. I think my cruise over Thanksgiving cost less for 3 of us, or about the same as that cabana for one day would cost.
The only thing that I think that these other cruise lines have had going for them longer than Disney is a really large variety of stateroom classes and styles, whereas Disney has been essentially inside ocean view, veranda, concierge, period. And then in the concierge, there's maybe 1 or 2 big expensive cabins, and then everything else is about the same size. The Wish is a different story. They're doing like multi-story and the like whatever the room in the funnel that's wild. So I think that Disney is about to introduce extreme price disparity as well into their room categories. So it would not surprise me if cabana prices, especially on Lighthouse Point, go way up, because they know that there are people in those rooms who will pay for it. I'm just glad I got to be in one cabana once in my life, because I don't know if I'll ever get to be in a cabana on a private island with Disney again.
Yeah, hopefully you will one day. My child is watching. I just noticed, but I have to log out of there because I think anytime I logged in, it made it.
It slows you down.
Good night.
Yeah. So
it slows me down.
Overall, Coco Cay, go and listen to Shannon. She does a really good job of breaking down all the different experiences and everything else. Any final thoughts of Coco Cay as far as, comparing it to Castaway Cay, food-wise, anything else along those lines? Kind of similar food.
Well, the food, so we get burger. I hate to not say Disney's Castaway Cay is the best island on the planet, but Coco Cay is pretty amazing. I need to see it. I need to compare it with people. So I haven't compared it with people, right? Like there were no people. Literally at one point we were on one beach and there was not one other person with us at that particular time. And in this water in one area that we went to, not one other person was with us. So they also have a huge pool, which sometimes it's nice to go swimming in a pool when you're on a private island. They have you guys saw this in the video and you can go back and look, and I'll make sure it's on both the feeds or whatever, but the Instagram video that I posted, but they had included splash pad and slides for the little kids and included little like pirate ship, which seemed really cool. There were, I believe there were basketball courts somewhere. You could see it in the map where all the different stuff is, but there was like several different beaches, tons of umbrella chairs. So just like Disney, lots of umbrella chairs, lots of little tables, little hammocks everywhere. I think I talked about this in the video. The worst thing about this island was that a lot of it, you had to walk through sand to get to places. And then eventually I found a path that I could get to several things without walking through sand more. But I mean, that's the only bad part. Like here's the difference though. Disney's private island was created when? And this private island was created like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So 2 years ago, basically at the start of the, a year or something before, 6 months before the pandemic. So
yeah, they had a lot of knowledge that they are able to build on to make the island as great as possible.
So they have the burgers and the fries and the chicken sandwiches and stuff, but then they also had tacos and stuff like that. So the only thing they didn't have is they didn't have cookies. I mean, I don't benefit from any of that, but they didn't have cookies. Oh, and let me tell you really quick this food story, because I know we're about to wrap up. And I said I would tell you this chocolate story later. Our head waiter tried so hard to get me chocolate cake because he was like, what do you like for dessert? And I said, chocolate cake or something chocolatey, like a cake of some sort or mousse cake, something like that. And he's like, I'm going to make that happen for you. So then the next day at dinner, I get chocolate pudding. And I was like, okay. And he's like, but this isn't chocolate cake. We asked for cake. I told my chef or whatever that we need chocolate cake, that's what we requested. So he goes, I'm going to send it to your room. So we get to our room later and somebody in our room steward said, hey, the dining room dropped off something for you. So we go and we're like, oh, look, it looks like a brownie. So closer to cake, right? It was like a chocolate, like fiber bar or something, like something that they sold or they gave you in their solarium for their healthy breakfast that they drizzled some chocolate and threw 3 berries on. I ate one bite and had to stop. I was like, I cannot. And we were dying laughing. We're like, what is this? So I did not get chocolate cake.
Oh my gosh.
It's what's it all saying? It's the gift, it's the thought,
It was definitely the thought. I actually got a chance to do a survey after, and I just spoke about how Ronald, the head waiter, tried. I didn't talk about like the fiber bar that I was served, but that he tried so hard and worked so hard to get me, a chocolate dessert for dinner that night. And, that's the amazing, above and beyond the crew member stuff that just is kind of what you miss the most about cruising, maybe.
Sure.
That crew experience was just amazing. So anyway, I was served a fiber bar.
Also, is I don't know why this popped into my head, but is the souffle gluten-free, or can they make a souffle that's gluten-free?
It's naturally gluten-free
at Disney. Okay.
Literally every single person eats it gluten-free. Just nobody knows that is happening.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so some final thoughts before we wrap up here. Disembarkation. Any thoughts on that? Pretty easy.
You literally walked off because of facial recognition. Celebrities doing this too. You walked off. It looked at your face. It cleared you.
Okay. And normally does celebrity do like Disney where they give you like your Pluto or whatever else? Or can you?
Yeah, we had that. And I will say that's the one thing that I would love a little more clarification on, because they basically said you stay in your room until it's time to leave the ship, right? But you go to have breakfast, you leave your stuff in the room. But they had us leaving the room leaving the ship at 8:30. Well, my husband wasn't even dropping off my kid at camp at that time. So we were not getting picked up. It was not our desire to leave that ship that early. So we were trying to push it, but we had to leave our room. So we took our stuff with us to the buffet for breakfast, and we got yelled at, actually. They were like, "You're supposed to leave that in the room." And I'm like, "But I'm supposed to be out of my room. So what do you want from me?" But we didn't necessarily have to be off the ship yet, although we still, we were the last one on, kind of the last one off. But yeah, it was super easy. Besides the whole weird, you're not supposed to take your food to the buffet, which I understand, or your luggage, which I understand. But if you can't stay in your room late enough, what are you supposed to do?
Where do you put it? Holly says, a couple more comments. The cabanas were cheaper before the pandemic. We are renting an Oasis Lagoon cabana for Odyssey cruise next year and purchased it back in 2020. The price has gone way up since then.
Ah, well, there you go. And they'll probably get it, right? Cabanas are fantastic. A lovely little place. I'm considering one on my cruise that'll, again, be almost the price we paid for the cruise. Not probably the $2,000 one. Although my cousin is like, you should get that one.
A couple more questions. Did they have the same amount of housekeeping as pre-COVID, or did they try to limit their visits to the cabins?
No, we still had two visits. And then they indicated they were sanitizing everything. So we still had 2. Carnival had dropped to 1, or tried to drop to 1 years ago. I'm assuming they're still doing that. They would only do 2 if you request it. But they still made our beds twice, did the towels, did all that.
Okay. If you're thinking about sailing with Royal Caribbean out of Port Canaveral right now, the Allure is going to continue to sail out of there through at least August and on into October. She's doing 7-night Eastern and Western different itineraries, and then from there she was down to Fort Lauderdale and then down to Galveston. So if you're thinking about sailing on one of the mega ships, at least as far as the Allure goes, that's what she's going to be doing. And Royal has too many ships for me to keep track of where they're going, who's going to be where.
And so remember that they have the Allure and the Oasis are the older ones. The Oasis, I believe, received a major refurbishment, because that's the thing about the Allure. They don't have any slides on that ship, but they have a pretty awesome water splash area. But the Symphony and the Harmony are the 2 newest mega ships, and they have huge water slides that are inside it. We didn't really talk about this much, but they did have that zip line, and they have a rock climbing wall, and then they have the flow rider. They have all this stuff, and they don't charge you extra to do those experiences. I mean, the zip line is literally from the front of my house to the back of my house, but it's still really cool to do that, and you're on a ship. We didn't talk about, they have that boardwalk. They have Central Park. The one thing, so I said I was going to give you an impression about this mega ship at the end. Once you're inside it, it didn't feel as big as it looks, or it appears to look from the outside. So when you're walking the ship, the Fantasy is big. This didn't feel any bigger than the Fantasy necessarily.
Do you think it's because they have so many staterooms? So there's not that much public area?
Maybe, but you'd still have to walk through, so there are some staterooms in the middle, because they have staterooms that overlook the boardwalk and the Central Park area. Central Park area is very cute. It's very hot this time of year, but it's very cute. So they have those boardwalk rooms. They have those rooms that overlook those areas, and then the outward facing balcony cabins as well that face the ocean. But that doesn't, you still would have to walk from one side of the ship to the other when you were doing stuff. So, we went to the walking path. The walking path is, I want to say so it's bigger. 1 point. Oh, did I take a picture of it? It's bigger. You know how, oh no, you do have to go across a couple of times, but it tells you it's way less laps than if you were on a Disney cruise. It'll even say this is how many laps you need if you want a 5-mile or a 10K. I thought it was very cool that it goes through that. And it even tells you where on the ship you would start and stop to do that distance of running, and do 12 laps. And then you get this. I don't know. There were
That's cool.
really cool, random, thoughtful things throughout the ship.
So as we kind of wrap it up, I get a bunch of things we get throw out about the show coming up. But Chris, any final thoughts as far as sailing on the Allure this season, Christy's trip?
No, I don't think so. I guess my final question would be, would you sail it again and pay for it?
Yeah. I would probably sail a different ship so I could see
Like the Harmony
difference.
or something?
And the Harmony and the Symphony have been on my list for a while, and it still is. And seeing that ship really does make me want to go even more. And even before I did the test cruise, I had booked because they had revitalized the Independence a couple years ago. So they have some water slides, some smaller water slides, and just different. The rooms still need a refurb from everything I've seen, but some of the outward spaces on the ship have been revitalized. So we booked one for later this year. So definitely still Royal Caribbean is not off of my list of cruise categories. Still, Disney celebrity is a little bit higher in my love, but I think too, for my son being 8, like these ships have some cool stuff for him now.
Yeah, I totally see that, especially for my kids getting older, as far as having a lot more activities on board that they would love to do, especially like the flow rider and everything else. I know our youngest is dying to get on that. So I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. I mean, I will honestly say this. All 3 of us are vaccinated. There's a lot of different, I'm not going to get into controversies of this and that, but, and obviously since you have other cruises booked, did you feel, overall safe with their protocols?
I did. Steve, that I texted you and I was like, I really want to book a cruise for next month. My husband said I can't, but, because we have so many booked for the future, I felt safe. I felt like I want to return to cruising. They are working really hard. And they're there to listen too, because they don't want the issues. So even if you think of something like, maybe don't touch my glass if you're touching other people's glasses, because, who knows, they eating and touching their stuff, whatever. They're like, oh yeah, good point. Like, just, I don't know. They've really thought of a lot though. They really have. And they clean just like at Disney World right now, and we know like surface touching right isn't spreading this disease so much, but they're still wiping all the sides of tables and chairs and stuff when you're getting out. It really is.
Well, there's still norovirus out there, right?
There is still norovirus, and people are probably still not washing their hands sufficiently.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, as we wrap up, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts today, Christy. I mean, I know Chris and I were super excited that you were able to go on this cruise, and, good for you for being able to take a friend. Maybe next time you'll think about Chris, out there in that 100-degree heat.
I invited Chris. Chris was invited. He had to work.
Yeah.
So sad.
We got so far that I even looked up flights, but then my schedule just didn't work out.
He remembered to look at his work schedule. Me, I was like, oh, I have to cancel this and this. So it was fine. Really quick, though. Quick. I'm so sorry. The internet. So I did end up buying the internet. And it's like being at home, and you can do it without megabytes. And their internet is amazingly ahead of Disney's. Which we knew, but they didn't have an app that allows you to chat. So if you all didn't have the internet, you can't text to people.
They don't even allow like free iMessage or anything like that.
Not that we could tell.
That's weird.
Yeah, Norwegian's chat was terrible. You'd get something like 2 days later or something. Sometimes when somebody would send something.
Legitimately.
So, all right. Well, as we kind of finish up, Kim, good to see you. I hope the move went well. Sorry, I just now joined. I hope you're not wrapping up. Unfortunately, we are. But
you can rewatch it. We'll save it.
To that point, if you enjoyed Chris's bright smile down there, no pun intended. Well, maybe there's a pun intended in that one.
Always a pun. Got to put a dad joke in there somewhere.
Yeah, we'll be back tomorrow. We'll be doing our Disney Cruise Line news wrap up for the month. A lot of things to talk about there. So join us tomorrow if you'd like to. We'll put up all these shows on our regular podcast feed, so you can listen to that way, because I know that I personally like doing that a little bit better than watching on YouTube. But for all the YouTubers out there, I hope you're enjoying this. If you guys have any comments for the show, please reach out to me, Christy, or Chris, and we'll try and add those in. We have got a lot of fun content, I think, coming up in the next month with the Dream sailing on August 9th.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just right around the corner, August 9th. I think we're going to try. I know we're going to put together a show next week where we're going to talk to somebody who's already done the check-in process. So we'll be going over the check-in process with her. Christy's got she had a lot of screenshots. We'll try and get that out for those of you who may have cruises coming up. What else do we have here? Also, we've got 2 people on the 9th cruise, which will be getting the trip reports out just as quickly as we can. We're going to be doing as many trip reports as we can on these first couple of cruises because there's going to be a lot of different angles to it. Everybody's going to have a different opinion on it. And we just want to get that out there for you guys so that you guys have the best information you can for your cruises coming up. Like our next cruise is not until November. So I'm excited to see how Disney kind of addresses all the protocols that you talked about tonight, Christy. And yep. I think I had one other comment I wanted to make, but maybe I'm losing it because
we'll also do a trip report on our trip to Alani.
Yes.
Alani.
Yes. Yeah, we've got a trip report. So we've got an Alani trip report coming out on Tuesday talking about Oahu that Chris and I did with just about a month ago. And then we're going to have Chris's trip report come out as well, talking about Alani as well. So a lot of people heading over there this summer, and I know on into the fall as well. So looking forward to yours and Seth's time over in Hawaii, Chris.
Yeah, me too.
So, all right. Well, as we get out of here, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you so much for all your support of our show. And we'll see you next time on the DCL podcast, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.